Namaste, aloha. My name is Janapati Das, and we are going to be reading chapter 9 today, beginning the purports. Let me offer my respects to you. Thank you very much for continuously tuning in and chanting and listening to the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. I'd like to offer my most humble obeisances unto Jagat Guru Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, my dear life and soul spiritual master, and to my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I pay my obeisances to you and thank you for translating and purporting upon this Bhagavad Gita that we can feast in its wisdom. So please join along. We're going to chant a little bit before class. Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gaurakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prestayate Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gaurakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasayate Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasudeva Bhakta-vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Vibho Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribo Nityananda, 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 Haribo, Chaitanya, 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 Haribo, Nityananda, 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 Haribo, Chaitanya, 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 Haribo, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness, ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Welcome back. We are reading from the purports and verses of chapter 9, entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge. And we had read quite a bit from chapter 8, talking about different paths, different people who worship demigods, the kinds of faith, and a pure devotee, devotional service, the difference between devotional service and many other paths, that yogic paths that people take for different particular reasons, but usually tinted with some kind of desire for sense gratification or some kind of salvationism. And the pure devotional service to Krishna being only for the causeless devotional service of Krishna only, really, for that loving relationship. And here Krishna is going to go into a little bit more. We read through the verses, so you had a little bit of an opportunity to hear that. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Tute Guyahataman Plavakshyami Anashuve Ganam Vigana Sahitam Yajganatva Mokshashe Shubat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Idam, this, tu but, te, unto you, Guyatamam, most confidential, Pravakshami, I am speaking, Anashuyave, to the non-envious, Gananam, knowledge, Viganana, realized knowledge, Shahitam, with Yat, which, Gnatva, knowing, Mokshashe, to be released, Ashubat, from this miserable material existence. Translation, text 1. The Supreme Lord said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most secret wisdom, knowing which you shall be relieved from the miseries of material existence. Pretty amazing statement. And this is very important. Because you are never envious of me. Living entities in the material world are envious of Krishna to one degree or another, because they want to be the Supreme Lord. And this is why we're here in this material world and suffering different kind of results of our attempts to be the attempted Lord of this world, because we are envious. And because to a different degree, depending on how envious we are of the Supreme Lord, how covered we are, we can understand or not understand, or we are covered by different amounts of matter, basically matter, material energy. But here he's saying that Arjuna is not envious of Krishna. He's basically, he started out a little envious because he had an idea of things, but he immediately surrendered and started acting as a disciple should, inquiring about the absolute truth. But Krishna here is saying, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most secret wisdom. It's the key. Based on our enviousness, our humility, our surrendering to our spiritual master, we can receive information that will help us. But, there's a saying that you can't help those. You can't, what was it? You can show the way to the water, but you can't lead a horse to water to make him drink. Or you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? There's that saying, famous saying in America, that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is referred to this as what was it? Come back to me here. Open secret. Bhakti yoga is an open secret. So it's available for everyone, but many people do not want to take it. So this is this secret wisdom. The wisdom comes from the lack of enviousness of the Supreme Lord. Envy, right? Envy comes from lust, and lust comes from our desire to own and control, as we have learned in the Bhagavad Gita earlier. So here Krishna is saying that because you're not envious of me, I will give you this information. I'm handing this information down to you, and you are receiving it like a disciple should receive it in the descending process, which will help you. I'm giving you the torchlight of knowledge. The spiritual master comes and gives the torchlight of knowledge. But many people, they don't want to do it because they think, oh, I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm good. No, I got it together here. As the devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, this is Bhaktivedanta's purport, he becomes enlightened. So the devotee becomes less and less envious the more and more they hear about the Supreme Lord, ideally, the purification from the devotee. They become more enlightened. And that word enlightened is very wonderful because it's got the word light. You're enlightened, you have the torchlight of knowledge coming into your heart, and you are actually seeing things for what they really are. The hearing process, and you have to hear from your spiritual master, and you have to listen to what your spiritual master is saying, and you have to apply what your spiritual master is saying to you. The hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed amongst devotees. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. So this, once again, this knowledge is going to be referred to in the next verse as the king of education, Raja Vidya. It's the king of education because it is not like a regular kind of knowledge where you accumulate information like you're accumulating particles of some, or accumulating cans of soup or something. It's a realized knowledge. It's a knowledge that is existing already in your heart, and the process of surrendering to it is the revealing. It reveals the information that is already there in your heart that's been covered up from your enviousness. Your enviousness is basically, there's a saying in the Quran, I like that saying that they use, is that Allah puts a rock on your heart, right, a rock covering, or covers your heart with stone. And that is because of your own desire to not want to serve him. Your enviousness of God, your wanting to be God, is like this covering. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and gives them the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna and the association of the devotees. So we've just started the Srimad Bhagavatam, and in the beginning of this Srimad Bhagavatam, we read through the first chapter. There are great sages of a gathering for this great sacrifice, headed by Suta Goswami. What are they doing? They're discussing the Bhakti Yoga. They're talking, they're associating with each other and enlightening each other about Krishna, And this is just a joyful and my spiritual master has referred to this as kind of coming into a great hallway of just a feast of information, and you're eating a little bit at a time, and you're letting it assimilate in your body, and this information, the knowledge of the absolute truth, just is continuous. It's eternal. It's joyfully performed. And this is why it said also in the Bhagavad Gita, I think we've read before in previous chapter, that the devotees, what is the word? And I'm probably paraphrasing it, but they are happy associating with each other and discussing information about Krishna. So this is not like, well, it might be this, it might be that, it might be that. And that's just mental speculation. Could be this, could be that. That's trying to use your own ability and knowledge to try to climb to the absolute truth. With just all the trinkets, those cans of soup that you've gathered on your shelf. You're like, well, this peas, cream corn. I was joking with my wife because we're Generation X, and so we're talking about our childhood as good. We used to have like canned soups, canned vegetables, canned everything, right? And so these are these things that we accumulate from our mental speculation in this age of information, so-called information. But the absolute truth is the absolute truth. It is Krishna, non-different than Krishna, and it is realized. It is not speculated. So you don't just sit around and, Krishna might have meant this, and Krishna might have meant that, and Krishna could have been that, and academic scholars saying, well, according to da-da-da-da-da, No, we are handed down the process from our spiritual master, and it is realized by our surrender, by our humility, and being lower than the straw in the street, like Lord Chaitanya's third prayer states, that we are receiving, that we eliminate that enviousness in our heart so that we can receive the information from Krishna, our spiritual master. Discussion of Krishna is very potent. And if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter matters more confidential than any he has already disclosed. So here Krishna is opening, this flower, the absolute truth. It's so beautiful. The very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And in the 2nd and 3rd, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapter are specifically related to devotional service, and because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they are called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed, pure devotion. Therefore, this is called the most confidential. And why it's called the most confidential knowledge. But the matters which are described, I read that already. One who is situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He therefore has no material pangs, although he is in the material world. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said that although one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Supreme Lord is situated in the conditional state of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. Similarly, we shall find in the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, that anyone who is engaged in that way is a liberated person. Now, this first verse has specific significance. Knowledge, idam gananam. I think that's in here. Yeah. Refers to pure devotional service, which consists of 9 different activities: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshiping, praying, obeying, maintaining friendship, and surrendering everything. I'm going to read those again because those are very important. Hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, remembering about Krishna, serving Krishna, worshiping Krishna, praying to Krishna, obeying Krishna, maintaining friendship with Krishna, and surrendering everything to Krishna. By the practice of these 9 elements of devotional service, one is elevated to a spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness. At that time, you can even practice one of these and become a pure devotee. At the time when one's heart is cleared of the material contamination, one can understand this science of Krishna. Simply to understand that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. So even the impersonalists have come to the conclusion that Ham Brahmasmi, I am spirit soul. But their conclusion after that is that they are the supreme soul. So therefore it's not enough to understand that you're not. It's a big step. It is a better step than being a rank materialist, but it is not the final step of understanding. At the time when one's heart is cleared of material contamination, one can understand the science of Krishna. Simply to understand that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. That may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but one should recognize the difference between activities of the body and spiritual activities by which he understands that he is not the body. In the 7th chapter, we have already discussed the opulent potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his different energies, the inferior and superior natures, and all this material manifestation. Now in chapters 9 and 10, the glories of the Lord will be delineated. The Sanskrit word anushuyave in this verse is also very significant. Anushuyave means to the non-envious, right? What we were talking about. Generally, the commentators, even if they are highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is a point that I didn't bring up, but yes, it's true. Bhaktivedanta made the point of why there is not a qualified or valid translation of Bhagavad Gita, because people are envious. They want to be Krishna. They want to have their own theories about what the Bhagavad Gita mean. They want to show off their prowess of knowledge in Sanskrit and understanding of Asian literatures and blah, blah, blah. But they completely miss the point that it's about Krishna. Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately. Because they are envious of Krishna, their commentaries are useless. The commentaries given by the devotees of the Lord are bona fide. No one can explain Bhagavad Gita or give perfect knowledge of Krishna if he is envious. One who criticizes the character of Krishna without knowing him is a fool. Such commentaries should be very carefully avoided. They're like poison. For one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pure and transcendental personality, these chapters will be very beneficial. Text 2. Rajavijja Rajaguyam Pavitram Idam Utamam Prayakshavagammam Dharmayam Shushukam Kartum Avyayam. Rajavijja, the king of education. Rajaguyam, the king of confidential knowledge. Pavitram, the purest. Idam, this. Utamam, transcendental. Pratyaksha, directly experienced. Avagamam, understood. Dharmyam, the principle of religion. Shushukam, very happy. Kartum, to execute. Avyayam, everlasting. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. Great verse. I love this verse. And the ashram I was in with my godbrother, Jivan Krishnadas, as my Shiksha Guru, he was referred to it as Rajavijja, because we were there to learn about the king of education, about Bhakti Yoga, by practicing sadhana bhakti from our spiritual master. It gives direct perception of the self by realization, It is the perfection of religion. So this is foreshadowing the fact that surrender to Krishna is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So we love chanting. We have a good time at retreats and chanting and having prasadam and associating with other devotees and like-minded devotees. It's wonderful. It's joyfully performed. Purport: the chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the King of Education. This chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the King of Education because it is the essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. There are 7 principal philosophers in India: Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yajnavalkya, Shandila, Vaishnava, and finally Vyasadeva, the author of Vedanta Sutra. So there is no dearth of knowledge in the field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge, the essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the studies of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. It is the most confidential because confidential and transcendental knowledge involves understanding the difference between the soul and the body, and the king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service. So we have Shankha Yoga, which is the difference between spirit and matter and who is the control of both, and the king of all knowledge, which is understanding our relationship to Krishna and our Sanatana Dharma, our eternal function of rendering loving service to God. Generally, people are not educated in this confidential knowledge. They're educated in external knowledge. It's true. These cans of soup that we just, we read stuff, we go to the library, we accumulate information on the internet, we go to ChatGPT to try to get the truth of things, and it's external knowledge. It's just mostly about everything in the material world. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved with so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities. But there is, unfortunately, no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. The most important knowledge out there, out of everything, and there's nowhere where they teach it. No university teaches that. Yet the soul is the most important part of this body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. So the analogy has been likened to the bird cage as being the external body that we take so great care of our bird cage. We put glitter on it and gold and clean it and wash it. And meanwhile, the soul, the living entity, is suffering, and the bird inside the cage is not being fed. There's no food to feed the bird, but we're doing so many things for the bird cage, we don't do anything for the soul. So Harinama, Harinama, Harinama Eva Kevalam. And we chant the holy names of Krishna for the benefit of us. The Bhagavad Gita, especially from the 2nd chapter on, stresses the importance of the soul. In the very beginning, the Lord says that this body is perishable and that the soul is not perishable. That is a confidential part of knowledge. Simply knowing that spirit, soul, is different from this body and that its nature is immutable, indestructible, and eternal. But that gives no positive information about the soul. Sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body, and that when the body is finished, or when it's liberated from the body, the soul remains in a void and becomes impersonal. But actually, that is not a fact. How can the soul, which is so active within this body, be inactive after being liberated from the body? It is always active. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active, and its activities in the spiritual kingdom are the most confidential part of spiritual knowledge. These activities of the spirit soul are therefore indicated here as constituting the king of all knowledge, the most confidential part of all knowledge. This knowledge is the purest form of all activities, as is explained in Vedic literature. In the Padma Purana, man's sinful activities have been analyzed and are shown to be the results of sin after sin. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in different stages and forms of sinful reactions. For instance, when the seed of a particular tree is sown, the tree does not appear immediately to grow. It takes some time. It is first a small sprouting plant, then it assumes the form of a tree. Then it flowers, bears fruit, and when it is complete, the flowers and fruits are enjoyed by persons who have sown the seed of the tree. Similarly, a man performs a sinful act, and like a seed, it takes time to fructify. There are different stages. The sinful action may have already stopped within the individual, but the result or the fruit of that sinful action are still enjoyed. There are sins which are still in the form of seed, and there are others which are already fructified and are giving us fruit, which we are enjoying as distress and pain, as explained in the 20th verse of the 7th chapter. So yeah, even if you see seeds on the ground, sometimes the seeds are still sitting in the seed form inside a pod or whatever, or maybe even be on the tree being activity. And then there are different varieties. You can see, oh, wait a minute, those seeds have come out and they're starting to, the embryo is starting to bulge up with, water, and it's starting to get life. And then there's some that have little sprouts, and then there's others that have grown into big trees. So similarly, our actions, our karmic actions, are in different varieties. So we're constantly creating new karmic reactions by the activities that we do outside of Krishna consciousness. And some have already, we're feeling, we're experiencing, we get sick, we have, accidents or things that maybe good things that happen because of good karmic reactions that we're getting too. So it's good and bad karmic constantly going on in our lives, in this life and in future lives, and activities that are happening are being fructified. A person who has completely ended the reactions of all sinful activities and who is fully engaged in pious activities, being freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, those who are actually engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord are already freed from all reactions. So pure devotees, they've reached that stage, they've nirvana, where they have no attraction for material desires anymore, and they are beginning with the Brahma Bhuta stage of Bhakti Yoga, where they are engaging in pure devotional service, and so they have no reactions. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all sinful reactions, whether fructified in the stalk or in the form of a seed, gradually vanish. Therefore, the purifying potency of devotional service is very strong, and it is called Pavitram Uttamam, the purest. Uttama means transcendental. Tamas means this material world or darkness, and Uttamam means that which is transcendental to material activities. Devotional activities are never to be considered material, although sometimes it appears that devotees are engaged just like ordinary men. One who can see and is familiar with devotional service, however, will know that they are not material activities. They are all spiritual and devotional, uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. It is said that the execution of devotional service is so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived, and we have practical experience that any person who is chanting the holy names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in course of time feels some transcendental pleasure and it very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. This is actually seen. Furthermore, if one engages not only in hearing, but in trying to broadcast the message of devotional activities as well, or if he engages himself in helping the missionary activities of Krishna consciousness, he gradually feels spiritual progress. This advancement in spiritual life does not depend on any kind of previous education or qualification. This method itself is so pure that by simply engaging in it, one becomes pure. In the Vedanta Sutra, this is also described in the following words: Prakash yash cha kamani abhyashat. Devotional service is so potent that simply by engaging in the activities of devotional service, one becomes enlightened without a doubt. Narada, who happened to be the son of a maidservant, had no education, nor was he born into a high family. But when his mother was engaged in serving great devotees, Narada also became engaged, and sometimes in the absence of his mother, he would serve the great devotees himself. Narada personally says, "Only once by their permission I took the remnants of their food, and by so doing, all my sins were at once eradicated. Thus, being engaged, I became purified in heart, and at that time the very nature of the transcendentalist became attractive to me." Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 5th Chapter, 25th Verse. Narada tells his disciple, Vyasadeva, that in a previous life he was engaged as a boy servant of a purified devotees during the 4 months of their stay, and that he was intimately associating with them. Sometimes the sages left remnants of food on their dishes, and the boy, who had washed their dishes, wanted to taste the remnants. So he asked the great devotees whether he could eat them, and they gave their permission. Narada then ate those remnants and consequently became freed from all sinful reactions. As he went on eating, he gradually became as pure-hearted as the sages, and he gradually developed the same taste. The great devotees relished the taste of unceasing devotional service of the Lord, hearing, chanting, etc. And by developing the same taste, Narada wanted also to hear and chant the glories of the Lord. Thus, by associating with the sages, he developed a great desire for devotional service. Therefore, he quotes from the Vedanta Sutra, Prakashascha karmani abhyashat. If one is engaged simply in the acts of devotional service, everything is revealed to him automatically and he can understand. This is called prakashaya, directly perceived. So this is stated over and over again, that one who is not envious of Krishna, one who is envious of all the imports of Vedic knowledge will be revealed to them by engaging in the devotional service. Even in this practice of sadhana bhakti, we are consistently purified if we are not accumulating new sinful activities, the karmic reactions of such. We are not committing offenses. So similarly, we are pulling out the weeds of our garden. We are preparing the soil, but we are not throwing new seeds into the soil to grow. We're avoiding allowing the elephant of the offense, the elephant offense of Vaishnava aparata, of criticizing the devotee of Krishna, which is destructive to our garden in general. Narada was actually a son of a maidservant. He had no opportunity to go to school. He was simply assisting his mother. Unfortunately, his mother rendered some service to the devotees. The child Narada also got the opportunity, and simply by association achieved the highest goal of all religions, devotional service. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that religious people generally do not know that the highest perfection of religion is the attainment of the stage of devotional service. That's why this is referred to as the perfection of all religion. Generally, Vedic knowledge is required for the understanding of the path of self-realization, but here, although he was not educated in the Vedic principle, Narada acquired the highest results of Vedic study. This process is so potent that even without performing the religious process regularly, one can be raised to the highest perfection. How is this possible? This is also confirmed in Vedic literature. Acharyavan Purusha Veda, one who is in association with the great acharyas, even if he is not educated or has not studied the Vedas, can become familiar with all the knowledge necessary for realization. The process of devotional service is a very happy one. Why? Devotional service consists of Shravanam, Kirtana, Vishnu. So one can simply hear the chanting of the glories of the Lord, or can attend philosophical lectures on the transcendental knowledge given by authorized acharyas. So it's joyfully performed to hear about Krishna, to chant about Krishna, to chant Krishna's names, to engage and eat the foodstuffs offered to the great devotees or to Krishna. Simply by sitting, one can learn, then one can eat the remnants of the food offered to God, like Narada Muni did with the great devotees. Nice, palatable dishes. In every state, devotional service is joyful. One can execute devotional service even in the most poverty-stricken condition. The Lord says, Patram Pushpa Phalam. He is ready to accept from the devotee any kind of offering, never mind what, even a leaf, a flower, a bit of fruit, or a little water, which are all available in every part of the world, can be offered by any person, regardless of social position, and will be accepted if offered with love. That's the main point. There are many instances in history, simply by tasting the tulasi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, great sages like Sanat Kumara became great devotees. Therefore, the devotional process is very nice, and it can be executed in a happy mood. God accepts only the love with which things are offered to him. So he doesn't need water or flowers or leaves. He just wants the love that we offer it to him. It said here that this devotional service is eternally existing. It is not as the Mayavadi philosophers claim. They sometimes take to the so-called devotional service, but as long as they are not liberated, they continue their devotional service. But at the end, when they become liberated, they become one with God. Such temporary time-serving devotional service is not accepted as pure devotional service. Actual devotional service continues even after liberation. When the devotee goes to the spiritual planet in the kingdom of God, he is also engaged there in serving the Supreme Lord. He does not try to become one with the Supreme Lord. As it will be seen, actual devotional service begins after liberation. So in Bhagavad Gita it is said, Brahma Bhuta. After being liberated or being situated in the Brahman position, one's devotional service begins. By executing devotional service, one can understand the Supreme Lord. No one can understand the Supreme Personality of God by executing Karma Yoga, Jnana, or Ashtanga Yoga, or any other yoga independently, without coming to the stage of devotional service. One cannot understand what is the personality of God. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed that when one becomes purified by executing the process of devotional service, especially by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita from realized souls, then he can understand the science of Krishna or the science of God. Evam prashana manasho bhagavat bhakti yogata. When one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus, the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of religion, and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should adopt it. Amazing. So we're going to stop there because that was quite a long purport and very exciting. This is great. Thank you very much. Namaste.